Hello and welcome to the Hardcore Gamers Club, your safe spot for all things gaming, HGC for short. Today we are going to be modding a controller. We will be using a 20 mod chip and tactical button. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is remove the 6 screws in the casing. I'm not going to show you that. If you can't find them screws, you got no business doing this. Okay, and then there's a 7th screw right beneath that barcode right there in the middle. All you need to do is break through that right there and then remove the screw. Next we're going to be removing the housing. Okay, so we removed all of the screws and we removed the screw just dead center of that little sticker there. So now we need to remove the housing. It's not real hard to do. All you need to do is take it and separate it. Just like that. And we want to very carefully remove these rumblers. Let's see. You can pinch it. You can pinch it right at the wire and very gently rock it back and forth until it comes out. And do the same with this one. Just pinch the wire as close as possible to it. Rock it until it comes out. Right? You don't want to just pull. You want to rock it. Let it gently come out. We'll take these. We'll set them off to the side. And we're going to remove the circuit board. I'm going to take and very gently rock this out of here. Now, sometimes it's easiest if you just take your finger and wiggle the buttons. Okay. These, just move them around as you're pulling it out. Same with this one. That'll help line it up. Just go ahead and take them off. Okay, so we got the circuit board out. And we're going to work on that. Okay, so at this point you'll want to take your time and clean out all of this other stuff. Okay, we'll clean this all up with the isopropyl alcohol and the buttons and everything. Make sure there's no dirt and roaches or anything like that in it. We'll put that over there with the rumbler. Okay, now we're going to work on the circuit board. Okay, because this is the sideways capacitor C15 instead of vertical, we know we need to cut for this particular chip the following points, which we're actually not cutting. We're actually just going to be scraping away the green portion of the board. Okay, so we need to clear off this point right here. Okay, and we're going to clear off the point right here. Okay, and clear off. This one right here. Okay. Now I'm going to clean them off and then I'm going to
come back to you what it looks like after cleaned off.
This is actual time, so you'll know how long this will take if you do it yourself. Okay. On this side of the board, we're going to hot glue this down nice and pretty right there, exactly just like that. Okay, we're going to take and bend over the wires very gently. Okay. And there we go. Got them all nice and bent over. We're going to line them all up where we need them to go. First we're going to lock them all down with just a little bit of hot glue right along the front side, just like that. It's always easiest if you use something to hold them down until the glue dries. cools, I should say. Always like to take off any excess and then use my finger to flatten it down. That helps it push it all the way to the board and go around the wires, holds them in nice and still. If your fingers are sensitive to heat, probably wouldn't be a good idea. That stuff's pretty hot. Okay, so there we go. We got them all glued down. Okay, now we're going to take the green wire and we're going to tack it in place. There's one. I'm going to put a little second little tack in a little bit further over. There you go. You see the little tacks? One right underneath the M from Microsoft, and another one a little bit further over, just underneath the O. Okay, so that's nice and clean. Okay, now we're going to real carefully manipulate this wire along the bottom edge here, so that it doesn't interfere with any of the buttons. And then we'll tack it right down in the bottom corner there with the hot glue. And you notice some little stringy things hanging. That's the hot glue. Don't be too concerned about a couple of strings. You can pull them off after you're done. They won't hurt a thing and they'll come right off. Okay, so we got a nice little dab of hot glue there. Tack that down right over here, just like that. I kind of like to get it to go in between the two solder points there, and then I'll tack that in place there real quick. There we go. And then that's just about ready to cut the length and then strip the wire and solder it on. We're going to do the rest of these wires, get them all in place just to speed things along as far as all the gluing and everything is concerned. We will be soldering the green wire to this center post right here. Okay, it's time to start running our wires to the locations that we're going to be soldering them down and gluing them in place. That way there is no mistakes. Just kind of adjust this camera here, see if I can find a good spot for it. Okay, we're just going to adjust this camera, see if I can find a nice good spot for it. There we go, I think that'll work. Okay, so you can see the green wire that we've already glued down. with the hot glue gun. And now we're going to run our other wires into the other locations. Well, actually, I think I soldered this wire. Yep, I sure did. So we're going to go ahead and solder the green wire before we go ahead and run all the other wires in, since we already got it all glued in place. You just want to hold it, you want to actually touch the wire itself up against the solder point, and then allow the solder in that point to melt completely, and then pull away from the thing. We're going to do the same thing with these other contact points. I guess I got this a little bit out of order here, and I had already glued down everything. Stop. Okay, so I already glued down all the wires, so we're just going to put a little bit of solder on the tip of the soldering iron and very gently tap it to the wire, and we're going to take our wire, we got to get it right in nice perfect spot here. I think I need to cut this wire just a little bit shorter. You don't want too much wire. As you can see, working with these little teeny wires is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So a nice pair of tweezers with some grip works really nice. We're going to get that right there, and we're just going to take the soldering iron with just a little bit of solder on it. We're going to touch the wire and the contact point at the same time. Now I took a piece of Q-tip swab with flux and put a little bit over the top of each one of these holes, so that whenever I did touch the soldering iron to it, and apparently I cut off the wire there. Hold on. I'll edit this out. Cut too much of the wire off and it broke. Okay, so once we got the wire stripped, we're going to put it right there on the hole, and there's already some flux on the hole, so we're just going to take our soldering iron with a little bit of solder on the end. We're just going to tap it right on top of the wire and on top of the solder contact, or the copper contact. I'm going to hold it down nice and good so we get a nice clean tap. There we go. There we go, nice and clean. It's sitting there. Everything's on. Okay. We're going to do our little blue wire. Kind of move this to where you can see. Now remember, I put some flux already on the board itself, and with a little teeny bead of solder on the end of the iron, I tap the top of the wire above the contact. It'll heat both the wire and the contact and leave just the smallest amount of solder holding that wire in place. Nice perfect connection. You don't need a whole lot of pressure or anything for it. So we need to readjust these wires and then glue them back down in place. Okay, we're going to hot glue this back down. Sorry, I'm blocking the view a little bit. Okay, so now we got all the wires in place. We will have to move the orange wires. You can the orange and brown, reddish brown wire is too close to the black contact on the right, so we will have to move that. But you'll take your black wire and you're going to solder it to the bottom contact. Make sure you touch the wire itself. Scoot it up against the solder, touch the wire itself, and then up against the solder. That will melt the solder and allow the wire to go all the way into the solder. And then again, I took a Q-tip with a little bit of flux and tapped it on the solder contacts before I did this soldering. You don't want to keep that there too long, it'll get too hot and burn out your contacts. So now we're done with the right side. All we got left to do is 3 more wires. The 2 wires for the LED lights or indicators, and the 1 red wire that goes to, I believe, is the power. Okay, now I got the red wire ran. I'm going to solder it to the furthest contact on the board here. See how I'm touching the wire itself and then pushing the wire into the solder contact as it melts. That way it gets a nice good contact. The solder really makes some really nice contact with the solder itself. Okay. Actually, looks like I didn't quite get it just right. I'll probably touch that up one more time. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, it's good. Probably could have did a little bit better of getting it into that solder, but I'll touch that up later. We'll go ahead and do the LEDs. We need to solder the white and gray wire to the bottom side of both of them LEDs. Okay. So this is very fine work. You get that too hot, you'll burn out your LED or knock your LED completely off of the board. So you just want to only heat up the one side of the LED solder very quickly, just like that. Don't take hardly any of the tap at all. They are very small, they heat up very quickly. Go. Now all we got to do is run the wires so they don't interfere with anything. Make sure you hold your finger over the wire if you're bending it close to the actual LEDs. Okay, so interruption after interruption after interruption. I forgot where I was. Oh, another interruption. Hold on. Okay, back off the phone. Now you guys see why I very rarely have time to make videos. with all the interruptions. But we're all good here. Got it all soldered on. All we're going to do is manipulate the wires so that they won't be in the way of any of the buttons, and then we'll lock them down with a little bit of hot glue if we need to. Okay. Now it's kind of hard to know what the camera is showing sometimes when you're working with a little teeny wire, so I apologize for you not being able to see what I'm doing, but you will get to see it here in just a moment. And for the most part, this video is right on as far as the length of time it takes to actually do it. Okay. I'm going to just kind of weave that wire around in through here. And you notice how I put my finger right on the top of the wire itself. There we go. We've got that weaved right around there. And everything is out of the way. Okay. Got the LED here and the LED here. We're soldered to the bottom sides of the LEDs. These will be your lights that let you know your tacticals. There's your power wire there. And we got our grounding wire way over here. Okay. And then we got black, yellow, and purple wires here. They just go to the chips. I don't remember exactly what they were for, but obviously that's the way they go, so that's where we keep them. Okay, I think I need to touch up the solder work on this wire here a little bit. There we go. So we're going to clean everything up with a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol, and all we got to do now is put it back together, solder in the tactical button, and we're all good to go. I am noticing, because I am narrating this after the making of the video because I had too many screaming people in the background, that I will have to adjust some of the wires to get them away from the little black round things that you see there where the power buttons X, Y, and Z go to make contacts. So we're going to need to adjust them around a little bit so that they don't interfere with the actual buttons. Okay. Always clean off the old flux. Always, always, always. It will become corrosive after a while. I don't care what a lot of these idiots say about the flux. Even if it's a no clean flux, you should clean off any remaining flux that's sitting there, because even a no clean flux will become corrosive over time. Okay, got another interruption, so hold on. Okay, back after the phone call. Okay, do our little cleanup, get rid of all the old excess flux. And we're all done. got to do is solder in the tactical button. Okay, we're going to solder one side of the tactical button here and the other side here. You got to be really careful not to bridge any solder contact to this resistor here, or for that matter touch it with the soldering iron. Not a good thing. Okay, now I already drilled the hole here, which I believe was 5/8. Okay, the direction manual on that has the exact hole size, just in case I said that wrong. But we want to hot glue this in, and you want to make sure that it's in place before you hot glue that down, so you don't get any of that glue underneath the tactical button. Okay, you put a little tack right there, allow that to cool, and then we'll just kind of add some more around it after it cools to really lock that in place. That way if you get a little overzealous and start pushing really hard on that button, it won't pop out on you. Sorry about the long wait here. Okay, so you can see I pretty much got that all buried up in that hot glue. That sucker is not going anywhere, especially once that cools. Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit more to it. Just make sure it's all nice and solid in there. Okay. And then once this cools a little bit, we'll solder in the other two green wires, and we'll be ready to go. Don't take long for this stuff to cool, so let's get it over here and get them other two wires soldered on. Okay, after taking a Q-tip and putting a little bit of flux paste on the solder, you're going to put your iron onto the wire itself and let that heat up and sink that wire nice and deep into that solder. It's kind of hard to do, so the tweezers really come in handy. Keep you from burning your fingers, and it's a lot easier to use. Okay, interruption after interruption. Now we're going to solder on the last tactical wire here. Almost there. Wait a second. Sorry about this not quite being on the screen for you. But we'll get you a good shot of it here in just a second. Okay. Now this upper wire, I didn't like the way it sunk. It's still kind of sitting up in the solder. So I'm going to use my tweezers to hold it down here and then tap it with the soldering iron. Get that to go a little bit deeper into that solder. There we go. Alright, so that's all done. Okay. There we go. Looks like, no, that's not touching. Okay, thought maybe the wire was touching through the solder pool there and hitting that resistor. You don't want that. Alright, so that's done, and we're going to go to the next step, clean up. Alright. Now all we got to do is put it all back together. All the wires are in place. See that orange wire? That's way too close to that black pad, so we're going to have to move them down a little bit so that it ain't near that pad. If you have to adjust a wire like that, put your finger on top of the solder contact, because you don't want to rip that solder contact off. Hold some liberal pressure down on it and then move the wire itself. These are larger contacts, so you can just kind of push that off a little bit, just like that. Alright, so that ain't in the way of that black pressure pad. And we need to get them other top two in that corner there. So we'll have to set the camera down here. Just doing a real quick inspection of everything, make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. And apparently I hadn't noticed that yet, so we'll get to it. Well, I might have cut that out by accident. But, let's take a look here. Alright. I'm going to make sure all your buttons are cleaned off. Clean out the whole controller. Clean up all the little pieces. This one I just did a light clean. It's mine. It's not a customer controller. So I wasn't real too concerned about a little bit of stuff on the outside edges. But I did clean up the buttons and everything, make sure they're not sticking or anything. Okay. We'll put the controller buttons on, and then we're going to take, and because this is wired to that tactical button, we need to get them real close together. Okay, and we're going to take and flip that board over and just line it up right in place. If the buttons fall through all the way, good for you. If not, just use your fingers to kind of wiggle them around a little bit and they will line up. And then just set your housing on. You will have to tuck that green wire in a little bit. Oh, almost forgot. Got to put the rumblers back in. Okay. Now, one has a big one has a small one. Really depends on your preference as to whether you want a heavy rumble on one side as opposed to the other for shooting and or whatever all makes your controller rumble. But usually you can remember what side they go in just by the way the wire is shaped and bent. but it's not really all absolute a big deal if you get them in the wrong sides. Okay, so we're gonna tuck that green wire in nice and out of the way of everything. There we go. Put it in there, and now we got 7 screws to put back in. Check all your buttons, make sure they're clicking and moving properly, and now all we got to do is put our screws in and we're good to go. Now, I did scoot them 2 wires over before I put this back together. Apparently I just did it while I was off the camera because there was a million interruptions. As you can hear by and see by all of the little minor edits and phone ringing and doorbells ringing in the background, that I don't get a whole lot of time to edit these videos and or for that matter make them. So although this video may only be about 45 minutes or so long, this actually took me a good day and a half to get done with all the interruptions. Speaking of interruptions, you see somebody else digging through my stuff as I'm working on it and making a video, and they just don't seem to get it. They just want to come in and watch and talk and everything else. So I have to edit the audio after I make the video. Alright, so we got it all put back together. All we need to do now is slap the battery pack in and go play. One last little quick check of all the buttons. We're good to go. Alright. Let's see if we get this thing to focus in here. Alright. Now you can't even tell that this thing was ever modded by looking, because you don't see anything on the outside other than that little teeny black tactical button on the back side. There's the tactical button. You just hit the tactical button whenever you want to change mods. All done. So everybody else, stay safe, happy gaming, and remember, I got giveaways. Go check out my memberships.